For years, the entertainment industry has been buzzing with rumors, secrets, and shocking revelations that make fans question just how deep the rabbit hole really goes. I think if there's one person who has never been afraid to speak his mind, it's Katt Williams. Known for his sharp tongue, fearless honesty, and no-holds-barred interviews, Katt has built a reputation for saying what others are too scared to admit. Every time he sits down for an interview, the world braces itself because you never know whose name will come up or what truth bombs he's about to drop. This time, the spotlight has shifted onto Bryshere Gray, best known for his breakout role on the hit series Empire. Gray's journey has been anything but smooth. From rising fame to public scandals, his story has always been tangled with whispers of exploitation and manipulation within the industry. And when Katt Williams connects those dots to Diddy, a man whose influence and power in hip-hop unmatched, it creates a storm no one can ignore. The question everyone is asking is simple. Was Bryshere Gray really used by Diddy? And if so, how deep does this story go? Katt Williams claims to have the answers, and as always, he's not holding anything back. Tonight, we're diving straight into the revelations, the drama, and the secrets that could shake the entertainment industry. To its core, Katt Williams has never been the type to bite his tongue. From the very start of his comedy career, he built his reputation on telling the kind of truths that make people uncomfortable. Whether on stage or in interviews, his words often slice through the carefully polished images of celebrities and expose the darker realities of the industry. That's why when Katt speaks, people listen because love him or hate him. He has a way of cutting through the noise and forcing conversations no one else wants to have. So when Katt Williams brought up Bryshere Gray and connected his story to Diddy, the entertainment world immediately perked up. This wasn't just another rant or a passing comment. This was Katt, shining a spotlight on two names that carry very different kinds of weight. On one side, you have Bryshere Gray, the young actor and musician who skyrocketed to fame on Empire, only to see his career stumble amid controversies and personal struggles. On the other, you have Diddy, hip-hop mogul, businessman, and one of the most powerful figures in the industry. The idea that these two stories could intersect in a way that left Bryshere used was enough to ignite a firestorm of speculation. To understand why Katt's words hit so hard, you have to look at Bryshere's trajectory. At the height of Empire's success, Gray was everywhere. He was young, talented, charismatic, and seemed to be on the path to superstardom. But fame comes with a price, and for Bryshere, that price was steep. Reports of erratic behavior, legal troubles, and behind-the-scenes conflicts began to overshadow his talent. What once looked like a fairy tale, Rise quickly turned into a cautionary tale. Fans couldn't help but wonder, how does someone go from being the face of one of TV's hottest shows to headlines about arrests and struggles in just a few years? That's where Katt Williams' revelations add a chilling new layer. According to Katt, Bryshere's downfall wasn't just the result of personal mistakes. He hints that there were forces in the industry, powerful people who saw Gray's youth and ambition as something they could exploit. And when Katt connects those forces to Diddy, the story shifts from tragedy to controversy. Because if there's one name that carries endless rumors and speculation in hip-hop, it's Diddy. For decades, Diddy has been at the center of conversations about power, control, and the darker side of fame. He built an empire, turned artists into stars, and cemented himself as one of the most influential moguls in music. But with that power comes scrutiny, and whispers about how he maintains his influence have never gone away. Stories circulate about contracts, loyalty, and the price people pay for proximity to his world. Some call it mentorship, others call it exploitation. Katt Williams, as always, leans toward the latter. When Katt spoke about Bryshere, his tone wasn't just gossipy, it was cautionary. He painted a picture of a young man drawn into circles far bigger than he could handle, surrounded by people who didn't have his best interests at heart. In Katt's view, Bryshere wasn't just struggling with fame, he was being pulled into a system designed to use him until there was nothing left. And linking that to Diddy only amplified the stakes, because suddenly it wasn't just about one actor's personal downfall, it was about the way the industry operates at its highest levels. Fans immediately picked up on the weight of Katt's claims. Social media exploded with debates, theories, and endless threads dissecting every word. Some believed Katt completely, pointing out his history of calling out industry secrets long before they became mainstream. Others dismissed it as another wild rant, insisting there was no real evidence behind the accusations. But the fact that people were talking nonstop, passionately, and with genuine curiosity proved just how powerful Katt's voice still is. For Bryshere Gray, the conversation was bittersweet. On one hand, it brought sympathy from people who felt he was a victim of circumstances beyond his control. On the other, it reopened wounds he might have preferred to leave behind. His name, once tied to his breakout role on Empire, was now linked to speculation about exploitation and manipulation. And no matter how the truth played out, the association was one that fans would not easily forget. As for Diddy, the reaction was predictable. His name has been tied to countless rumors over the years, and while he rarely addresses them directly, his silence often fuels speculation even more. In this case, the lack of response only made Katt's words seem louder. People began connecting dots, recalling other stories they had heard, and weaving them into a narrative that seemed to confirm what Katt was suggesting. What made this revelation particularly explosive was the way it tapped into larger conversations about the entertainment industry. Stories of young stars being used up by the system are nothing new. But hearing Katt connect the dots in such a direct way made it impossible to ignore. Fans began to question not just Bryshere's story, but the stories of countless others, who rose fast and fell just as quickly. Were they all just cautionary tales of fame gone wrong? Or were they evidence of a machine designed to chew people up and spit them out? Katt Williams, true to form, didn't present his words as mere gossip. He framed them as a warning, a call to pay attention, and whether you believe him or not. One thing is certain, his revelations once again forced people to look deeper, to question the narratives they've been fed, and to wonder just how much truth hides behind the glittering facade of Hollywood and hip-hop. As the buzz around Katt Williams' comments grew louder, fans and critics alike couldn't help but dig deeper into the tangled web of connections between Bryshere, Gray, Diddy, and the larger entertainment industry. To some, it sounded like just another outlandish claim from a comedian known for stirring controversy. But to others, it fit into a much bigger pattern, one they'd been suspecting for years. Bryshere Gray's story had always seemed too tragic, too sudden to be explained by simple bad choices. His rise to fame on Empire was meteoric. Practically, overnight he went from an unknown talent to a household name, celebrated for his charisma and raw energy. But fame that comes fast often burns out just as quickly, and Bryshere's struggles began almost as soon as he reached the top. Arrests, erratic behavior, and disturbing reports left fans wondering what had gone wrong. When Katt Williams brought Diddy into the conversation, he was tapping into long-standing rumors about the mogul's behind-the-scenes power. Diddy has always carried an aura of control, someone who could make or break careers with a single phone. Call that level of influence, while impressive, has always carried a darker edge. Whispers of exploitation, manipulation, and the high cost of staying in Diddy's good graces have followed him for decades. For Katt, these weren't just whispers, they were warnings. And Bryshere's downfall was, in his eyes, a direct result of the kind of environment Diddy represents. The industry, Katt argued, is built on cycles of use and discard. Young talent is discovered, polished, and pushed into the spotlight. But when the pressures of fame collide with behind-the-scenes manipulation, those same stars are often left broken, replaced by the next shiny face. In this system, loyalty is rare, and Survival often depends on your willingness to play by the rules of those in power. For Katt, Bryshere's story was a textbook case of this psycholand. Diddy's name was central to the narrative. The reaction online was divided but intense. Supporters of Katt Williams pointed to his track record of exposing uncomfortable truths, long before others dared to speak them. They recalled his interviews about Hollywood's dark side. The way he called out powerful figures years before mainstream media caught up. For them, his words about Bryshere and Diddy were not wild accusations, but a continuation of his role as a whistleblower. Critics, on the other hand, accused Katt of sensationalism, arguing that his claims were vague and based more on shock value than hard evidence. But whether people believed him or not, the conversation refused to die down. Bryshere's name, once fading from public memory after Empire ended, was suddenly back in the spotlight, tied to one of the most powerful moguls in hip-hop. The narrative of a young actor being used struck a nerve with fans who had seen too many similar stories play out in the past. They began comparing his trajectory to other artists who rose fast, only to crash just as quickly, sparking theories about an industry that feeds on the dreams of the young and ambitious. What made Katt's revelation even more compelling was the way he framed it. He didn't speak like someone chasing gossip. He spoke like someone trying to pull back the curtain, warning others not to be fooled by the glitz and glamour. In his words, Bryshere's fate was not just his on it, was a symptom of a much larger disease in the entertainment world. And tying Diddy's name to it only amplified the sense of urgency. Because if even someone as powerful as Diddy could be accused of using people, then what hope did young, vulnerable stars have? Meanwhile, discussions about Diddy's legacy grew louder. For years, he has been celebrated as a mogul, a businessman, and a cultural icon. But the flip side of that success has always been speculation about what it takes to build and maintain that level of power. Katt's words forced people to confront the possibility that the empire wasn't built solely on talent and hustle, but also on the exploitation of those too young or too naive to understand the cost of entry. Bryshere Gray himself stayed quiet, which only fueled speculation. Fans wanted to hear his side, to know whether Katt's words held truth, or if they were just another layer of controversy piled onto his already troubled reputation. But the silence spoke volumes. In an industry where speaking out can mean the end of your career, many wondered if Bryshere's quietness was a sign of fear rather than indifference. As the debates raged on, one thing became clear. Katt Williams had once again managed to turn the spotlight onto the uncomfortable realities of fame. Whether people agreed with him or not, his words opened doors to conversations that the industry often tries to keep closed. Exploitation, manipulation, and the cost of fame are not easy topics to confront, but they are ones that demand attention. For fans, this revelation was more than just gossip, was a reflection of their own growing mistrust of the industry. Over and over, they had seen stories of bright young stars destroyed by the very system that promised to uplift them. Bryshere Gray was just the latest example, and if Katt's words were to be believed, his downfall was not an accident but the result of being used by those more powerful than him. And at the center of it all, the name Diddy loomed, largest symbol of influence, power, and the questions no one seemed to want to answer, as the storm around Katt Williams' comments refused to die down. The conversation began to move beyond just Bryshere Gray and Diddy. What started as one explosive claim turned into a wider debate about how the entertainment industry operates, the hidden costs of fame, and the price that young stars often pay when they enter the game without fully understanding the rules. Katt's words had cracked open a door, and fans, critics, and insiders alike were now peering through it, trying to make sense of what they saw. The story struck a chord because it wasn't just about one man's downfall or another man's power. It was about a cycle that seemed to repeat itself over and over. From child stars who grew up too fast to musicians whose careers crashed under the weight of pressure, the pattern was familiar. Katt's framing of Bryshere as someone used echoed the experiences of so many others who had risen quickly, only to burn out before their time. And when Diddy's name was attached to that narrative, it wasn't simply a personal accusation, it became symbolic of the entire system of exploitation whispered about for decades. For Katt, this wasn't new territory. He had long positioned himself as someone who speaks uncomfortable truths, even at the cost of his own reputation. Time and again, he had warned of predators, manipulators, and powerful figures who feed off the vulnerable. Some dismissed him as paranoid or bitter, but others saw him as one of the few willing to say out loud what many already suspected. His comments about Bryshere and Diddy fit perfectly into that larger pattern, giving fans yet another reason to believe that his words carried weight. Bryshere Gray's silence throughout all of this only deepened the mystery. To some, it was a sign that Katt was right, that speaking up would come at too high a cost, and so the young actor chose to stay quiet. To others, it was simply the silence of someone who had already endured enough public scrutiny and wanted no part in fanning the flames. Either way, the lack of response left fans free to interpret the situation however they wanted. And many chose to believe Katt's version of events. As for Diddy, the mogul remained unmoved, as he often does when his name is tied to controversy. His empire continued to thrive, his businesses remained intact, and his silence gave no fuel to the fire. Yet, in the court of public opinion, silence can be dangerous. Every day that passed without a statement, every interview where he avoided the topic, only added to the perception that there was something he didn't want to address. In a world where perception often matters more than truth, the absence of denial felt, to many, like a confirmation. The impact of Katt's revelation went beyond the individuals involved. It forced people to question their own relationship with fame and the celebrities they admire. Fans began re-examining stories they had ignored, reconsidering scandals they had once brushed off as bad behavior. The idea that Bryshere Gray, once a rising star, could be an example of someone used and discarded shook people because it felt too familiar, too plausible. And that's the power of Katt Williams' words. They resonate not because they're always backed with heart. The lasting effect of this revelation wasn't just scandal, it was awareness. Fans, artists, and aspiring stars alike were reminded of the dangers that come with chasing fame. They saw how quickly someone can rise and how brutally they can fall. And they understood, perhaps more clearly than ever, that behind every headline about stardom lies a story of struggle that may never fully be told. For Katt Williams, that was always the point. He didn't need to prove every detail. He didn't need to show documents or receipts. His role was to speak, to spark, and to force people to look deeper. And in the case of Bryshere Gray and Diddy, he did exactly that. He turned a fading name into a cautionary tale, and he put one of the most powerful moguls back under the microscope. Whether people walked away believing every word or questioning the details didn't matter as much as the fact that they were talking. The conversation had been opened, and once opened, it couldn't be closed. That's the legacy of Katt Williams' revelations. They don't end with him. They ripple outward, challenging people to rethink what they thought they knew about fame, power, and the cost of success. And so, the story of Bryshere Gray, Diddy, and Katt Williams becomes more than just a headline. It becomes a symbol of the truths we ignore until someone bold enough forces us to confront them.